Hi, welcome to another video. This is my wrap-up video. So every month I will basically wrap up everything that I've read, watched, played, etc. And I also play a game in tandem with it. The rules to the game, you can see them in a previous video. I'll link it down below. But I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. It is based on the Underland Chronicles, which is a series written by Suzanne Collins that I absolutely adore. So I'm hoping that it'll kind of influence you to read them as well. Cat, why now? Why? Why now? Look at what I'm dealing with. Yes, this is also my food because I'm hungry. This is Toothless. He rarely ever comes out, so I'm not gonna bother him. And you get a preview of the board. Okay, I'm gonna try and make it short because a lot of my wrap-up videos tend to be long, but I did read quite a bit this month, which I didn't expect, but it was also the Aurelium Spring Equinox readathon, so I had a few prompts that I had to fill. I am going to be putting out a kind of vlog video with that as well because I also went to Arizona and I don't know, it's gonna probably be chaotic and not very good. But here's where I'll mostly talk about what I thought of the books, how I enjoyed them, blah, blah, blah. So I am going in chronological order of when I read them, not like from best to whatever. Because yeah, it makes the movement on the board more diverse. I don't even remember what I read first. I'm pretty sure it was, okay, so I have, do I count that one? I have a spreadsheet that I use, and the thing is, one of the books is one that I technically started in March, and I made a decision on it by like the end of April, so I feel like that one actually should go last. So we're gonna start off with the first book that I finished in the month of April, which is The House in the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune. This was one of my spring TBR reads that I put that I was like, okay, I have to read this in the spring, and my goodness, this was a good choice. So, The House in the Cerulean Sea is basically about a man, I believe his name is Linus. Yes, Linus Baker. He is a caseworker for, what do they call it again? It's an organization that kind of puts children who are magical in orphanages. Yeah, we'll just put it like that. Yeah, so department in charge of magical youth. He works for them and he is a very diligent worker. He's, you know, in his mid-40s and he's always worked very well. So they were like, listen, we have a special task for you. It's top secret though, and it's on an island and it's an orphanage that's run by a kind of peculiar man, and they're also very peculiar children. So we want you to, you know, objectively observe and let us know if you think that it is well run. It ends up being such a charming story about this kind of grumpy man who is very rigid in his ways and gets pulled out of those ways and learns to look at things a little differently. But I mean, he's already kind as it is. It's just that he gets more immersed into it, I guess. And I thought it was so cute. There's an adorable romance between Linus and I think his name is Richard? I'm not entirely sure. Arthur, who is essentially the guy who runs the orphanage. The children are his wards, and they have such a cute dynamic. I thought it was adorable. It was just so good. And the children were so convincing. And I work with kids, so let me tell you, when a book can actually pull off the vibe that kids have, I love it. On top of the fact that like they are magical. So like you have the Antichrist, who has a dark sense of humor that I adore. It has so much innocence in it. And yet coming from the mouth of a child, you're probably like, yeah, I don't know, man. Like that's a little, ew. And then you have the slime kid. I forgot his name, but he wanted to be a doorman or a bellhopper. Just so cute. Everything about it, absolutely adorable. The whole story, I was a little worried that I would get bored because it really is just this man with these children, but the dynamics, the dialogues, the characters themselves, and also kind of the underlying story of like, well, these decisions are important to kids. It is their entire life, so choose wisely. And also, I mean, it clearly had the message of discrimination based on race, so you can draw the parallels there quite easily. But yeah, I understand why it is as popular as it is and why a lot of people have loved it. I definitely see it. I gave this book 5 stars. It was great.
Step 1, wake up early, gonna rise with the sun. Step 2, get some good, some food in you.
So the empty spot that I landed on has a prompt that says the last book that I rated versus The Ninth Reign. So the reason I made that prompt is that it's for cases like this of a book that I may have really, really loved, but compare it to one of my absolute favorites. The Ninth Reign is the first book in the Winnowing Flame trilogy. It is an epic fantasy. It is by no means comparable to The House in the Cerulean Sea. It's just, no, The Ninth Reign still wins in this case. Like if I had to pick between The House in the Cerulean Sea and The Ninth Reign, I would pick The Ninth Reign. But if I were to be asked, well, what would be a better spring read if I'm looking for something kind of more cozy and more like cute, then I would definitely say The House in the Cerulean Sea. The next book that I read was an e-arc that I received from NetGalley. I believe the publisher is Tor, and it's a novella. It's called The Salt Grows Heavy. So let me look up a synopsis of this because I just want to say that it wasn't exactly what I expected. Because I'm going to read the synopsis and then I'm going to tell you what I actually think it really was. The Salt Grows Heavy. It's a standalone. And honestly, the cover and the synopsis was what drew me to request it on NetGalley. So it says, you may think you know how the fairy tale goes. A mermaid goes to shore and weds the prince. But what the fables forget is that mermaids have teeth, and now her daughters have devoured the kingdom and burned it to ashes. On the run, the mermaid is joined by a mysterious plague doctor with a darkness of his own. Deep in the eerie, snow-crusted forest, the pair stumble upon a village of ageless children who thirst for blood and the three saints who control them. The mermaid and her doctor must embrace the cruelest parts of their true nature if they hope to survive. So it does have all of those elements. I'm not saying it doesn't. But I expected it to have a little bit more of the world because we are in a fairy tale and it is a fantastical setting. And I expected it to be able to understand what happened to this world, and you are given that in like snippets and stuff, but the author's style that she wrote this in, it's very clear that she has a very vivid vocabulary and is very focused on her prose, which is wonderful. I know some people really love that, but oftentimes I felt like I was trying more to understand what was being said, like what the sentence meant, rather than like, oh, I feel immersed into this story. I feel like I'm picturing this world very well. It was vivid, but it was hard to actually picture most of it or even imagine it. And then there was also the fact that the pacing was a little difficult for me to wrap my head around. I couldn't understand if it was the past or the present or the future, or because they interacted with the kids at some point and then it cut to some parts, and then sometimes it was almost like very dreamlike. Basically, I'm just gonna say it's very fever dreamy and also not at the same time. Whatever you want to do with that. Also, I couldn't understand some of the characters' situations. Like the mermaid couldn't talk but also could heal herself. And then the plague doctor, I was like, who the fuck is this guy? Like, it was very vague. It was very, very vague. So it was good, but yeah, it could have maybe used with a little more context. I think that's the right word for it. So I gave The Salt Grows Heavy, I don't even remember. Hold on. I think it was like a 3 something. It's been a while. Yeah, okay. I gave it a 3.25 because it did have the vibes. It had that very creepy fairy tale, fantastical part to it. I just had a really hard time with the writing style and the fact that it felt like the author ingested a thesaurus. But overall, it was good. If that sounds like it's something up your alley, I would recommend it. Because it's a 3.25, I'm gonna round it down because it's, closer to a 3. So we move three spaces.
Step 3, you grow hard about what you want to be. Step 4, everybody just...
Alright, that empty spot, the prompt on there says to compare the last book that I read to a song. I've gotten this prompt a few times, and with how weird this... Ooh, I might have a song. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to scroll through all my likes. I thought that a good song for this book would be The Islander by Nightwish, but no. Instead, I think that a better song for it is... I was listening to it a second ago. Show Me Your God by The Amity Affliction. I feel like, yeah, that's a good song to fit the entire atmosphere of The Salt Grows Heavy. The next book I read is Soul of the Sword by Julie Kagawa. This is the second book in the Shadow of the Fox trilogy. This is a young adult fantasy, very Japanese mythology inspired book, and I love it. It's so good. So I'm not a young adult reader. I typically do not enjoy them. I'm not a fan of teenage angst. I'm not a fan of a lot of the choices that characters make in young adult. I'm not a fan of the themes in it, but this trilogy has shown me that sometimes young adult can be very good. And so I read the first one last year and I really liked it. It reminded me of an anime. It was great. And then I was like, I really need to continue the trilogy. So without really spoiling too much, because this is the second book, the entire premise of the trilogy is about a young girl who is half kitsune, which if you don't know, that means a fox spirit, sort of. And she ends up tasked with a piece of a scroll called the Dragon Scroll. And this Dragon Scroll, if it's put all together, it makes a whole scroll. And when it is read on a specific day after like every 1,000 years, one mortal can make a wish from the, the god of change, a giant dragon that comes down from the sky. And they can wish for whatever the fuck they want. And some people have wished for immortality, some people have wished for power, whatever. Point is that that time is coming around again. And there are nefarious, people in the works that are trying to get their hands on it. So she is trying to bring a piece of that parchment to a temple that is hidden away that no one knows about. And she kind of never really knew about the world because she was kept at a temple with monks. And when she goes out to go bring that scroll, she ends up meeting quite a few interesting characters. And I love the friendships in this so much. The dynamics are great. But also, there is an assassin that is kind of out to find that scroll. She is a kitsune. Kitsune are known to be tricksters, and so she lies to him and says, well, I'm going to where the scroll is, so if you just keep me safe on the way there, then maybe you can get your hands on it. He doesn't know that she's carrying it the whole time. Now, this assassin is also carrying a demon sword, which he is constantly battling for the demon inside the sword to not possess him. So he's very grumpy, and she is very sunshiny, and I did not know that grumpy sunshine was something that I was into, but I adored it. Shut up, phone. I am talking. So that was probably something that was a little eye-opening for me. Now, this second book, without saying too much, you get a lot more of the friendships and the relationships. You get a lot of hope in this book. A lot of, there's a lot of shit going wrong, but there's also potential that things will get better, and they're helping each other, and they are getting to that temple, they're reaching their goal, they're gonna save their friends, and it was so much fun. I had a great amount of fun. And my favorite part is that two characters in this book develop a romance. It is a gay romance, and I loved it so much because one of them is your typical, I was thinking of Tony Stark half the time, just constant sarcasm. That or Chandler from Friends. Constant sarcasm, always like looking at situations and be like, we're fucked. We're fucked. And then the other man that they're like flirting together with, he's a samurai, he has a code, he's very moral, he's very gentle, very kind, very poised, he's also a noble. And the dynamic was just glorious. I absolutely adored it. So yeah, but don't be fooled because the stakes in these are high. I'm pretty sure people die in each book, and yeah. But I'll talk about the final book after. But I did really like this book. I gave it 5 stars. It made me laugh. It just had so many enjoyable moments, and it's very memorable. So
Do your thing.
Wake up, today's gonna be a good day. 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 Wake up, today's gonna be
yay, I landed on a good spot. Twitch Tip is a character in the Underland Chronicles. She is a rat with a very sensitive nose, and so that spot is basically just that, you're friends with her, she scented a path for you to skip ahead 2 spaces, and now give her a hug and fuck off because you stink. So I like that spot. That's a pretty easy one. All right, on to the next book that I read. The Rose Code by Kate Quinn. This was a book club read with my local library. It is a historical fiction, which is not usually what I read. I did not actually read it physically, But I did own the copy for a long time. I got this in an Unplugged book box subscription box for a long time ago. And I'm actually currently selling it on Pingo Books because I really did love the story. I think it was very good, surprisingly for me, because I don't usually read historical fiction, nor do I usually enjoy it. But it was very good. I just don't see myself reading it again or owning the book. I listened to this on audiobook. The audiobook is great. I highly recommend it. The narrator, she should get an award for the amount of accents that she did. I don't know how she kept track of all of it, but it was mind-blowing. So yeah, if you want a good audiobook, even if you don't read historical fiction, I do recommend it. I think it was very good. So The Rose Code, it's about these women who, I mean, it's during World War II, so it's at Bletchley Park. If you don't know what Bletchley Park is, it was basically a place where all the very intellectual people who have the minds to crack codes and to decipher various things were put in. And this means that a lot of people there actually had autism and had certain diagnoses that today would be diagnosed, but at that point they were just considered weird or other, and they were often rejected. But in a time of war, you need all the resources you can get. So these women work at this park and they each have different roles, and they cannot share any of the information that they get from those roles with each other or anyone outside of their lives. So really there was a huge impact of the weight of secrecy on friendships and all sorts of relationships. And of course, you know, there is the dangers of, well, what happens in a time of war? It's in England. England did get bombed from time to time, so there were moments in here where I was like, holy fucking shit, I did not see that coming. I did not expect there to be loss on this level. But most of all, there is a spy. And it's basically these women they're very different from each other. And at times, like, they weren't really friends sometimes. They were almost mean to each other. But when you're under that kind of duress, yeah, I could see it happening. I really enjoyed all of the characters. They were all very interesting. And I didn't expect the spy. I should have. And then once I knew the spy, I was like, what a dick! What an absolute dick! So yeah, it was very good. I gave it 4 stars. For anyone who does like historical fiction, I would recommend it.
Good day. Yo, set your affirmations, aspirations. I got shit to do.
Alright, so the empty space that I landed on has prompt of the last book rated versus The Shadow of the Gods. I realized that maybe I should have put The Hunger of the Gods because I actually like the second book in the Bloodsworn saga. But yeah, I mean, there's The Rose Code versus one of my favorite fantasy books ever has, like, you can't even do that. Shadow of the Gods is gonna win no matter what. And again, it's so different. Rose Code, historical fiction. Shadow of the Gods, an epic fantasy with Vikings in it. I'm gonna pick that one with a fucking giant dragon god. I'm gonna pick that one. So yeah, it doesn't hold a candle to it. No way. But, you know, it's different. If someone were to ask me, you know, oh, well, I'm kind of in the mood for something that's more like, well, no, because if someone were to ask me, I want a book that represents empowered women and, you know, just the struggle of trying to keep oneself safe and one's family safe, I would potentially recommend Shadow of the Gods just because of Orca's storyline. That shit's intense. And also, I mean, there's so many other female characters in John Gwyn's Bloodsworn saga that, yeah, I don't know. But yeah, if someone said historical fiction, I'd be like, there you go, Rose Code. Which Rose Code might be one of the few historical fictions that I've read and I've liked, so it might be my only recommendation for historical fiction from now on. If you know any other good ones, maybe drop them down, because I don't have many. The next book that I read was The Night of the Dragon by Julie Kagawa. It is the third book, the third and final book in the Shadow of the Fox trilogy, and it broke my heart. It broke my heart. I can't think about it too much. So I already gave kind of a synopsis of the series, and this third book, the second book had so much hope, so much, you know, we're getting there, we're fighting, we're gonna reach it. The third book is the bad guys kind of won, and now we have to figure out how to unfuck our fuck up. And it doesn't get unfucked. fucked. It just gets fucked more. And I can't say more because if you are interested in reading this, I'm just gonna say it will crush your soul if you are enjoying it. If you're reading the first book and the second book and you're like, man, I'm so excited for the third book, just be ready, because I cried one time at like, there was still 100 pages left in the book. I'll even show some of my annotations because I just wrote no. I couldn't deal with the emotional impact of the. I wrote somewhere here, it was fuck you, what? Excuse the fuck you. I was like, none of this. This is not okay. So I was bawling my eyes out. And there was still 100 pages left of the book. So I was like, what the actual fuck? How is this gonna end? And then for the rest of those 100 pages, I was still crying. And I ended up on Discord because I have a little private Discord channel with the people who hang out frequently in my videos and streams and all that. And I was hanging out on Discord with Rockette, one of my viewers, who she's read this and she recommended this. Well, I started reading the first book and then she was like, you really need to finish the rest of it. And she told me, she was like, yeah, I should have probably prepared your husband with like tissues and chocolate, but I kind of forgot to text him and let him know. And I'm just like, girl, you are destroying me. I was crying on Discord. I slammed this book on the table and I woke Ryan up from his nap. So yeah, this was emotional. A freaking amazing ending though. The only thing that I have to say is that I would have preferred the epilogue. The epilogue was very, very long. Is it the epilogue? Yeah, that's at the end, right? The epilogue was very long at the end, and I feel like it was more of a chapter, like it could have been a chapter 30 or whatever, and then we could have gotten an epilogue of like, you know, a little bit after that, because the way the epilogue ended, I'm like, that's very open-ended. It's very bittersweet. I need a little bit more. But yeah, other than that, freaking amazing. So 5 stars, obviously.
The math of preparation, good food, good mood, blood in circulation, one step.
Well, look at that. The prompt that I landed on for that empty space was, if I could change one thing about the book, would it make it better? So here we're gonna get a little bit spoilery about The Night of the Dragon. So yes, I would change. I think that everything is phenomenal until that very ending. So it's been 100 years and Yumiko is now the daimyo of the Moon Clan, and there's this festival going on that's to commemorate the people that 100 years ago died to save everyone, to stop the dragon scroll thing from happening, the demons taking over. And there's the Shadow Clan daimyo who comes over and she's like, oh, my grandson, he won't stop talking about you. Didn't even bother to come and say hi to her because he clearly really wanted to meet her, but didn't even bother coming into the palace to just say hi. And they literally just see each other from across the whatever it is with the lanterns going up. And then he's like, I finally found you. And it ends there. And I'm like, okay, listen, if we're gonna do this, that should have been the end of another chapter, and then give me an epilogue where what I would like is that Yumiko is immortal technically. Well, not immortal, but she is going to live a very long time. She's 100 years old and she still looks like she's only 18. So what I think would be great is if Hakaimono, the demon who ended up possessing or sharing the body with Tatsumi, that he went back to hell, right? And he was like, you know what? I kind of miss those human emotions that I hate so goddamn much. So he leaves Jingoku and he finds, I mean, this could just be me adding to the book my own little ending. So maybe that doesn't need to be added. Maybe I should just write a fanfic for it. But anyways, he leaves Jingoku, finds Tatsumi's soul reincarnated into this young Shadow Clan boy, and then they are merged again in a body in which his body is now also long living, so that him and Yumiko can be together. And then I just need a little bit of what their life is as, you know, her the Moon Clan leader and him being the Shadow Clan cursed child, because the lady did call him cursed. So maybe that's, I don't know. I think maybe I would have liked just a little bit more on that. So would it have made it better? For me, absolutely. I don't know about for everyone else. If you've read up to there and you did listen to the spoiler part, let me know what you think. End of spoilers there. Next book was another audiobook that I listened to. This was for my Rowdy Book Club with a bunch of friends that we just convene and host once a month. The book is called Room. It's by Emma Donoghue. And it is a contemporary thriller, so there is a movie that came out of it. When did this book get released? It got released in 2010, and there was a movie that was done. It was available on Netflix for a while. I don't know if it still is, but I did have it on my list of movies to watch. And it's dark. It's dark. It's very unsettling. It's essentially about a girl who was kidnapped when she was, a young adult. She was going to college, and this guy took her and he locked her in a shed, and then he built around that shed, turned it into a room. She got pregnant, she had a child, and now she's living in that room with her child. And the entire book is written from the child's perspective. So the writing is very infantile, and that just makes it worse. That just makes it so much more terrifying because, again, I work with kids, and the author clearly knew how to write from a kid's perspective because everything, like the way that the child would rationalize, also the developmental, stage of the child it's not as advanced because, well, he doesn't even know that there's a world outside and he's 5. So he still acts like a baby, but he can read, he can write, he can understand numbers, he can do math, all that stuff, but his social capabilities are non-existent. He relies on his mother completely. It's really rough. But basically, and this is not necessarily going to be a spoiler because a large majority of the book is them in that room, how they live, and then also the consequences of what happens when they call him Old Nick, the guy who kidnapped them, or kidnapped her and then keeps the child in there. It's just, oh God, it was just so, oh God. There were times when I just wanted to turn off the audiobook because I was listening to it on my commute to work to go, teach children. And I'm like, I don't know if this is the right thing to be listening to get into the mindset to teach today. It was still very well done. So at first I thought it was very much going to be like a very thriller, but it is more contemporary because they do end up escaping the room and they're out. And then at that point, it's more of like, well, how do they reintegrate into society? What has happened to them, right? How much has it impacted them? My main qualm with it is that a lot of things didn't make total sense. Like the hospital that they're in, it seemed a little too freeform. Like medications were just kind of left in the open. The kid never really got therapy, like an actual appointed therapist, which to me is like, that's the first thing you should do. This child has never experienced the world. Everything is weird to him. He is hyper attached to his mother. Give him a therapist, right? Did I really absolutely love it? No. Did I like it? Yes. So I gave this one, I think 3.75. Yeah, I gave it a 3.75. So I will round it up to moving 4 spaces. I need to go blow my nose. I'm sorry, I'm stuffy.
At a time, yeah, that's how you make it. Set a goal you control and the steps you take.
All right, I'm apparently getting a lot of comparison prompts because now it's comparing the last book read, so Room, with The Longest Walk, which is it's a short book by Stephen King that I did not enjoy. It was very tedious. It was very, oh man. It was overly sexual when it really didn't need to be. I get that it was a metaphor of life, but oh my gosh. So yeah, Room is definitely better than The Longest Walk, in my opinion. You can, honestly, and you can learn more from Room than you can from The Longest Walk. The next book that I read this both physically and with audiobook, so I got through it very quickly. I've noticed that I will read books quicker when I don't really like them because I just want to get through it. And that would be Chilling Effect by Valerie Valdez, I think. Yeah. This book was sent to me by Roquette, the viewer that is amazing, and she's just great. She sent me this because she told me she found it in like a used bookstore, or maybe it was like Goodwill or something. And I looked at the cover, I was like, dude, this cover is awesome. I mean, look at this. It's a lady falling from her ship with a bunch of cats around her. Seems so cool. And then the back of it also sounds really great. It's like a captain that has a ship and a crew, and her sister's been kidnapped, and she is like some badass captain and she wants to free her sister. I don't know, I feel like half the time when I was reading this book, either physically or audiobook, I was like coasting and I was half somewhere else, half paying attention to what was going on. Essentially, what lacked a lot with it was the fact that I didn't care for the main character. All the side characters were very shallow, very one-dimensional. And even the general atmosphere of it, I feel like we could have gotten so much more if we had been given more world building. Like, I know this is the universe and we're supposed to kind of expect aliens, but sometimes there were just aliens that were plopped in there. I'm like, can I get a little more about that, and like maybe more of the politics of this universe and how this works, because I'm not understanding the gravity of what she's saying about her sister being kidnapped. And then halfway through the book, that plot line doesn't even matter anymore. It turns into something else. And I'm just like, what? This book had potential to be good, to be even great, and it wasn't. Also, there was a lot of Spanish words in here, which for bilingual readers, I'm sure that this book is probably a lot of fun, but for someone who's not bilingual, it always helps to put like what do they call those? Footnotes. It would be great to have had footnotes, because I know basic Spanish, but man, some things I'm like, dude, I don't know what the hell that means. Like, and I didn't feel like Google translating every time. Like, I am a big advocate of, if you don't understand something in a book, just look it up real quick, especially if it's bothering you. But I don't want to have to look something up almost every other page, right? Like maybe one thing to help me understand the context of the story or the world building, but not like just general phrases and dialogue. Yeah, okay, so here's one. No hay peor cuña que la del mismo palo. Like, I understand there's no worse cuña, I think means like pride or something, than something of the same, I don't know. If you speak Spanish, please translate that for me. But like, this happened a lot. And then on top of that, the dialogues often felt very forced. Like, the humor that was trying to be conveyed was just, I'm like, all right, I get it. You're trying to be funny, but it's too forced, and I don't find it funny that much anymore. I don't know. I don't think this book had very good balance. I don't think it had good pacing. I don't think it had very good characters. And I don't think the plot was very well fleshed out. So yeah, I gave it a 1.5 simply because the concept was good, and the cats at the beginning. I wish that more had been done with the cats. So we're gonna move up 2 spaces. Fuck. Damn it, I just looked at my board.
I try to pick one thought, have some concentration, and if I make a mistake, it's called education. I try to do this every day, call it rep.
Alright, I died. The Vineyard of Eyes. It's a dangerous place in the Underland Chronicles. And the only way I'm going to be able to get out of there is the next book. I'm essentially going to roll a dice, and that'll use up my turn. So, without further ado, the next book that I read was Inspector. It is the first volume in the Inspector manga series. I believe it is still ongoing. And I picked this up because my husband watched the show, and he really likes the show, and he was like, you know, if there's any manga that I would probably own, it would be Inspector. And I'm like, okay. So he found the first volume at Barnes & Noble, and he was like, I need you to read it. I didn't know much about Inspector. I kind of saw snippets of it here and there, and I was like, okay, it looks like it's got your typical Japanese lore of like yokai, monsters, ghosts, and all that, and then this girl who seems like an investigator type of thing. That's all I really knew, and it sounded like some kind of mystery, ghost investigation, hunting type of thing. But then I read the back, and it basically said that there's a love story in here, and I was like, oh damn, I don't like that, because if there's something you should know, my husband likes romantic interests in his shows and anime and all that. I don't. I typically am not a fan of them because either moves too quickly or it's not a healthy relationship. It starts with this girl called Kodako, who she is in a hospital, and it's like a few years later, but she goes to the hospital regularly because she has lost one of her eyes and her leg. And this happened when she was 11 years old. She was abducted by yokai, so monsters, who wanted to make her their god of wisdom. And so now she just kind of has relationships with them. And she sees this boy at the hospital who's visiting his cousin. His name is Kuro, and she has a crush on him. And that's how the book starts. So I was like, oh gosh, I'm not gonna like this. But thankfully, she is a quirky little girl who is very strange, and she has the body of a middle schooler, but she's actually like, she's an adult basically. And she just has a sense of humor that I'm like, okay, you're weird and you embrace it, and I like that. And Kuro also has a interesting background. I'm not going to say what it is, but I wasn't expecting it. And I'm pretty excited for the rest of this. I'm not sure what to expect with the rest of the series. I did read, the author did leave a note. So they originally wrote this manga as a book, and then they submitted it as like, okay, well, I guess it'll turn into a manga. But she did say, she was like, for anyone who's expecting a mystery, this book is not that. Like, there are mysterious aspects to it, but it is not at its core a mystery. I'm not entirely sure what it is though. Maybe it's an action, maybe it's just a, I don't know, casual type of thing going on. Who knows? But I do like it and I'm excited to continue it. So it's a win. Ryan can say that he has successfully gotten me to read a manga that he really wanted me to read. Some chaos has begun. Movement is happening in the house. Anyways, what am I doing again? Oh, right, Inspector, but I have to move. I don't really rate comic books or anything either, like manga or whatever, because I just can't. It's such a short piece of a wider storyline. So either way, I'm going to use it to get out of the dead space that I'm in, which means I have to roll a 6 dice.
Wake up. Today's gonna be a good day.
Oh, 6.
Wake up. Today's gonna be a good day.
This dice has brought me much fortune. All right, next book that I read was The Steel Prince by V. Schwab, and the artist, what was her name again? I think it's Andrea Olimpier or something like that. Olimpieri. Anyways, this is part of the Shades of Magic world, which is V. Schwab's trilogy. So it has like the Darkest Shades of Magic, Conjuring of Light, blah, blah, blah. So this one is about the king that is in that novel trilogy. This is when he's younger. And now I wanted to read this, but I was a little hesitant because I read her other comic called Extraordinary and I didn't love the art. I didn't really love the story either. So going into this, I was like, I don't know. But thankfully, I did actually enjoy it. I thought that the little story in here was good. I think it should have been longer. Essentially, it's about Maxim, right? Is that his name? Maxim Maresh. He's very young and he is essentially going against his father's wishes. I'm not going to go too much into detail into the whole world of it, but he's going against his father's wishes. And so his father kind of exiles him to a city that is poorly taken care of in the kingdom. And he meets the soldiers that are stationed there, and someone comes to shore. She is a pirate queen and she uses a very dark magic, bone magic, and she's terrifying and she is brutal and she just kills people for no fucking reason. Well, I'm sure there's a reason, but yeah, she's not nice. And he and I think she's like a commander type of soldier woman in the military here. She's related to the pirate queen and she wants to try and vanquish her. It has a very cool progression, but I think it goes too quickly. Like, we don't really get enough of Maxim to really get to know him. I think that the panels that are in there could have been more, how do I even say this? Like filler panels, I guess, parts that maybe would have been a good like transition point between panels. Sometimes it just jumps from one thing to another and I'm like, I would have liked a little bit more in there. But overall, the actual like story that's being told in here is interesting and I do want to read the rest of them. Thankfully, I found someone on Pango Books who was selling the 2 other ones, so I ordered those for a cheaper price than I would have if I'd bought them anywhere else. It was good. Again, I don't really give ratings to comic books and mangas and all that just because I don't really know what to give them. So I'm not really gonna move for this one. The final book that I experienced, some people are probably gonna get mad at me. Please don't get mad at me. A Day of Fallen Night by Samantha Shannon. This is my library copy. I'm borrowing it from my library and I need to bring it back, but I'm DNFing this. Not because I do not think it's good. I got almost halfway, like I was far into this, but every time I picked it up, I couldn't really get into it. And then when I did try to get into it, and I do love the world that Samantha Shannon writes. I think it is intricate, it is vast, it is very, very epic. But all the points of views, they're all very different, and they're also all like not enough time is spent with them, I guess. Every single chapter is a different point of view and almost every single chapter ends with a cliffhanger, and by the time you get to that character again, you forgot what the cliffhanger was and it almost seems like some time has gone by and you're just like, I don't feel as invested anymore. So really what kept happening when I was reading this is that I'd be like, oh my gosh, this is so cool, and okay, no, oh my goodness, this is really interesting, and no, oh, this is great. Like like that, it felt very zigzaggy for me. Like I'm liking it and then I realized that I didn't really want to pick it up anymore. So maybe it's the wrong time for me to be reading it. Maybe I'll try and pick it up again some other time. But this is a massive book, and I feel like if you're gonna make a book that is almost 800 pages, probably more than that, you have to make it where I want to pick it up. Not something where I feel like I'm being dragged and pulled left and right and then told to be interested in this thing and then, oh no, but that let's forget about that for a second, let's go on to this thing. So yeah, not the time for me to read this. I don't know if I'll ever pick it up again. Even The Prior of the Orange Tree, when I think back on it, I liked it when I read it, but it was a long time ago, and I kind of can't remember most of what happened, so I don't know. To be determined.
Wake up, today's gonna be a good day. Wake up, today's gonna be a good day.
I swear to God, if this is like doing some kind of exercise, I'll pass. Yeah, I'll fucking pass.
Put on those gym shorts.
No.
What's the extra?
Burpees.
How many?
5. It's not a lot. Okay. John's gonna do the burpees for me, so I'm cheating because I'm wearing a dress. So let's all
Fucking
cheer.
do burpees in a dress. What's up?
Let's all cheer John on.
You missed that. Back some count.
Come on.
You have to hit the front.
I don't even know if it caught that, but I
I
tried.
gotta do it. So 5.
5. Oh, don't yourself.
2.
3, 4, don't yourself 5.
I got close to that every single time.
You did. Well, thank you, John. So now I get to skip over to the space. I'm not going to show it because I forgot to show it, and I don't feel like it.
She wants to be in the video.
You want? All right. That's all the books that I read. Now we talk about the other shit. Because, again, this is a monthly wrap-up, so it's everything that I consumed. Okay, so we're gonna start off with the movies. I didn't watch a whole lot, unlike last month. I did start watching The Mustang on Netflix, and I didn't keep watching it, so I can't really say much about it. It was very slow-moving. It's about a guy who's in jail, basically, and I think he's in, like, Montana, maybe, and there's a program to train Mustangs. It explains it in the movie that, like, that's a thing that's been happening, is that there are a lot of wild horses, and they've been either euthanizing them or having prisoners train them, and then they become like military horses. But yeah, I didn't continue it. It wasn't super engaging, so yeah. Then I watched Do Revenge with Rocket on Discord again. It was actually quite fun, and it had a very unexpected twist. I didn't see it coming, but it is very much your rich kids high school cliche movie of this girl got betrayed because of rumors and she wants to enact her revenge. But again, interesting twist, didn't see it coming. It was a good movie. It wasn't great, but I would recommend it if you're looking for a teenage drama it's kind of, I think everyone in that movie, the characters definitely all needed therapy. All right, then shows. Also, not a whole lot of shows that I've been watching. Ryan and I started The Florida Man, which is on Netflix. It's surprisingly good. We didn't think it would be, but it's essentially this guy who has a gambling problem and he got involved with whoever he's indebted to, and he's been doing jobs for him, so he's not a cop anymore, and he gets sent to Florida to go find this his boss's girlfriend who ran away, and she is trying to look for a treasure, and it gets him involved with family, and there's just there's a whole bunch of little side things that happen, and like what the things that you think could go wrong, so it's fun. We haven't finished it though. We did finish Carnival Row, which has 2 seasons. It is complete, I'm fairly sure. I don't think they're doing any more with it. And the first season, we really liked it. And the beginning of the second season, oh my gosh, it was so good. But that last episode, or even like the last 2 episodes, it started dropping. And really the conclusion to it was just disappointing. I don't know, it felt like the relationships that were in it started falling apart, and then the motivations also just kind of flopped, and the overall ending where you're just like, dude, you went through all this effort to change things. Okay, so the battery died when I was in the middle of talking, and since I'm just talking about the movies, I just put everything away. I'm sorry if the lighting is very different. It's kind of dark in my little computer corner, but I was talking about Carnival Row, about the fact that the ending just didn't feel right because there was all that effort for there to end up being no change. There seemed to be this plan where our main character would kind of come in and be a major political figure to incite change, to bring acceptance of the Fae folk, but he just ended up being like, nah, never mind. So yeah, the ending was kind of like, dude, you did all of that for nothing. So I really liked Carnival Row until the end. Then I decided to add animes into here because I did start watching an anime. It's called Buddy Daddies. Please do not be deceived by the name. It is actually surprisingly adorable and very high stakes at times too. So it's these two guys who are assassins and they kill a man who ends up being the father of a little girl, and this little girl just kind of imposes herself in their lives and they end up having to be dads. They do try to give her back, but her mom doesn't want her, so they have to manage a life of being assassins and dads. Now that puts them in a very hard place because, well, they're sucking at their jobs because they're constantly worried about this little girl who keeps getting into trouble and keeps getting them into trouble. And yeah, I kept watching it. I think I'm on episode like maybe 10 now, and it got really brutal. Like, it suddenly took a turn and I don't know where it's headed now, but I'm surprisingly charmed by it. I think that's the way I'm gonna say it. I'm charmed by this show. So yeah, Buddy Daddies is kind of fun. I don't know how long it intends to be. And then video games. We're gonna end it off with the things that I stream. So I do stream video games Saturday and Sunday. Usually, if it doesn't happen, I'll usually like say it. I'll probably try and be better about using the YouTube like what do they call it, announcement thing or whatever. Or then I also just will post on my Instagram stories a lot. But I finished Kenna Bridge of Spirits, so the entire playlist is there. I think there's only like a total of 6 parts to me playing it. It was fun. It's very cute, and at the same time it's very sad because I wish that I could tell you exactly what the story is about, but I throughout the game there was a stream one time where I was like, what the fuck is happening? I think Kenna she's a spirit guide, and the whole game takes place in the spirit world, but there is a spirit who like manages a village, I guess, and the village begins to kind of, it's struggling, and he blames the mountain spirit, and so he ends up corrupting the area around, and Kenna is fixing it, and she encounters these different people that lived in the village and that had specific roles, and they have been corrupted. They've been turned into these monsters and you have to fight them. The gameplay in itself, I think it was mixed between very easy and very hard, where, I mean, I didn't play on a very hard mode, but sometimes I struggled to try and fight things. It's very Souls-like, so, just a lot of dodging and then hitting when there's an opening, and you do have some really cool skills with it. My biggest complaint about it is probably like the looting. Like there's very little for you to pick up, and I don't feel like there was really, I don't know, like the exploration of it was kind of dull too. It's pretty, but it's kind of dull. And the best part are the little rot spirits. Those were the best. Those were absolutely amazing. So I did like it. I liked it. I don't think it's an amazing game, but I did like it. Because I finished Kenna, I started another game. I started Dishonored. This has been on my list for a very long time, and I just started it. I literally had one stream of it, and I'm going to be continuing shortly. So far, I mean, it's an old game, but so far I'm not super into it. I understand that I'm a bodyguard, that you play as a bodyguard for a governess or something like that, someone who's an important political figure. She gets killed, you get blamed for it, and then, yeah, from there on, you're just trying to save her daughter who was taken. And I'm interested to see how the rest of the gameplay goes, because it seems like you'll get like modified, like a modified mask to maybe be able to see different things, maybe cool different weapons and things. I don't know. I'm interested to see how that goes. But yeah, I did just start it, and I think that's it for my wrap up. Again, I'm really sorry that my battery failed and now we're in this zone with very different lighting. That's a lot for the month of April. I hope that your month went just as well. Please let me know anything that you've read, watched, played, whatever. So with that, thank you for watching. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.
Losing time, I'm fading fast. I just wanna make it last. Try to let go of the past. I close my eyes, embrace the blast. Sleepless nights and headaches stack. Restlessness to